So, things don't always go to plan. Now, this next art journal page that I'm going to show you today was one of those projects where I originally started out with an idea in my head, kind of really clearly defined as to what I wanted to achieve with it. And then things conspire, whether it's things don't look right or whether the page just kind of takes over. Now, sometimes that does happen where what you want to do and what happens are two totally different things. Now, this isn't all about not knowing what you're doing. It's more about the art taking control. And sometimes there is a piece of artwork that's there that wants to be created and you have no say in the matter. So no matter what you try and do, that piece of artwork is going to try and emerge. And that's exactly what happened with this art journal page today. So I started off with a different idea in my head, and then what I got in the end was something completely different. So I'm using a practice circle page, and I've got my hot cocoa acrylic paint from Indigo Blue. This is a lovely, luscious, chocolatey brown, and I'm just smearing some of the paint onto the page, and then I'm just going to wipe it over with a baby wipe, a wet baby wipe obviously, just to completely cover the page, and then I'll start dabbing to try and give it a kind of mottled effect and get rid of some of those wipe lines. The thought in my mind was to try and create some kind of leathery, old, beaten up leather effect, but as you'll see later on, that didn't really turn out exactly the way that I planned it. So happy with that coverage, so it's just time to give it a quick heat blast and then we can move on. So this is a piece of 6x8 grey grunge board, and I'm going to be using these Tim Holtz Alterations steel rule dies, gadget gears and hardware findings. And I'm going to punch these out using my big shot, so I've got a collection of cogs and gears and that kind of thing. And with the magic of TV, here we are. So off camera, I've already kind of worked out where these cogs need to go, and using the trusty matte medium from Mod Podge, I'm going to stick all these cogs down in the kind of predefined areas that I want them to be in on my page. And I'm sure you don't want to sit and literally watch glue dry, so I will place a couple and then I'll jump to the end. I'm just adding on the last piece now. This is a key which is cut out from that hardware findings die, and then I'm going to grab my heat gun and just give it a blast to make sure the glue is nice and dry before we can move on to our next step. So it's back out with the hot cocoa acrylic paint from Indigo Blue. I'm just going to go around each of the items now and just give it a light coat, and then I'm going to dab it over the top with a baby wipe to make sure that every single piece is nicely covered but doesn't have any brush marks on it. So I want it to look pretty much like the background. So I'm going to blend in the paint that I'm adding on with the paint that's already in the background. And again, this did take quite a few minutes, so I'll just show you a couple and then I'll jump to the end of this section as well. So now all of my grunge board pieces are kind of blended into the background, and as you can see, I've gone round with the baby wipe, just mottling it so there's no brush marks and everything blends seamlessly. So I need it all dry before I can move on. So again, out comes the heat gun and then we can move on to the next step. So this is a textured paint called Rusty Paper, and this is from VIVA DECOR. This was given to me by my friend Linda Simpson. This is the first time I've used it properly, so I just wanted to have a go to see whether or not it did give that kind of rusty effect that I wanted. As I said, it is a texture paint, so if you do apply it quite thickly, you do get a real very close gritty kind of grain with the paint, but I'm brushing it on so it's not that textured, which is fine. So my background has now gone from wanting to be like a distressed leather, now turning into a piece of rusty metal. I'm not unhappy about it. In fact, I think it looks absolutely brilliant. Obviously, applying this rust effect on a brown background really does give it that base for it to look like rusty metal. So I would have thought that if you'd applied this over a brighter colour that it wouldn't have worked quite so well and wouldn't have looked so realistic. So putting that brown on first really was a good move. So to accompany the rusty paper, there was also this rusty patina. Now this, I didn't actually realise this until I actually started putting it on, that actually this is like a glitter paste. So when you add this to your rust effect, it kind of gives it a little bit of a glittery, gleamy kind of effect. So, and I wasn't particularly happy about this. So again, I carry on and persevere with it because I thought, well, it's not a problem. If I don't like it when it's finished, I can always cover it over, go back over again with that rusty paper and clear some or get rid of some of it. As I'm adding this this glittery kind of texture to it, my mind is already formulating ways to get rid of it. So I'm already thinking ahead as to ways that I can kind of knock this back a bit and make it look not quite so shiny. So I'm just going to finish adding the last few bits and pieces to it, and then I'm going to pop it to one side to let it air dry normally. I'm not going to use the heat gun on it because there's another job that I need to do first. So this is a piece of watercolour cardstock, and I've got a piece of book text, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Mod Podge to completely cover the watercolour cardstock, and then I'm going to stick the book text right the way over the top because I need to use it as the base layer for one of my focal images for my art journal page. So I'm making sure that there's no bubbles or creases in it. I'm just going to give it a quick blast, and then I'm going to trim off the excess from around the border of the card. Next to this is a Tim Holtz 4 Stampers Anonymous stamp set. It's Classics number 5, and I'm going to be using this Feminine Face stamp and the Sepia archival ink from Ranger. I'm going to stamp this image in the centre of the book text. And it's always a lottery whether these things work, which it did do, which is brilliant. So I'm now going to trim the image out. I'm just leaving a border all the way around. I'm not going to take it right the way up to the edge of the image. I want a little border so I can grab a knife on my paper distressing tool, and I'm going to ruffle up the edges. My paper scruffer is that old, I think the blade's blunt, so I'm going to use the edge of my scissors instead. But be careful. So I've gone all the way around the outside. I'm just going to get rid of the snow. And then I'm going to bring back in that Sepia archival ink, and I'm just going to go around all the scruffed and roughed up edges. So I'll just tidy up the mess and then bring out some more of those grunge board pieces. This is from the Hardware Findings die, and using the rusty paper again, I'm just going to grab a brush and then I'm going to stipple on that rust effect texture paint onto those hinges. So on these I've decided to add as much texture as I possibly can because I want them to look really rusty and I want them to look as though they are starting to corrode. So I've added this paste, or this the rusty paper texture paint on quite thickly with the paintbrush. And then I'm just going to grab my heat gun and then just give them a blast until they're nice and dry. So now they're dry and they're actually stuck to the mat a little bit. I'm just bring back that sepia ink. I'm just going to just give them a little bit of a coating of that distress ink, not the distress ink, the archival ink, just to make them look a bit dirty. And I think they look very effective, even if I do say so myself. So next I've grabbed a piece of cardstock or printed cardstock from my stash. This is a brick wall and I've just roughly torn the edges off, and then I'm just going to mess it up and make it dirty again using the same archival ink that I did before. And this is a piece of Hessian or canvas that was in a piece of Happy Mail from, or recent Happy Mail from Penny Dwayne. So I'm going to use the indigo blue ultra thick gel medium. This is the ultra thick Slap It On, and just using a plastic spatula that I've gone off to find, I'm going to apply that quite thickly onto my art journal page and stick down the Hessian and also the brick wall paper over the top. And I'm going to use that gel medium because I want it to grip and butter it on the back to make sure that it's all nice and secure. So using this gel medium does give it a little bit of dimension because it's not stuck flat to the base, which I didn't want it to be because we have the cogs and everything in the background anyway. So now I've layered those pieces up, I can add a few other little pieces to it as well. Just a few other small pieces, just to add a little bit more movement and interest to the page. So these are just a couple of those offcuts from the book text page that I discarded earlier, and I'm just going to stick those down using that gel medium again. And it's at this point that my art journal page that I have in my head, the idea that I wanted to create, I suddenly realised that this was so far removed from it that I just had to go with it and just do whatever it wanted. One of the disadvantages of working with a circle page where you've already punched holes out to bind or put it back into your journal is that you've got to make sure that the page stays on a kind of horizontal plane, otherwise you're going to be sticking things on and they're all going to be slanted. So now it's time to add the hinges. So for this I'm just going to use some bog standard PVA craft glue, and I'm just going to put a thin bead of that glue and then just stick them down at the top. Now at this point I thought to myself, well actually it would probably be better if I used some split pins, some brads, and I have some plain brass brads in my collection somewhere, so I thought, well, I may as well add those just to give it a little bit more interest, and I also thought it was maybe a good idea to add them to the hinge too, or the escutcheon as well. So that's exactly what I'm doing now. So just using a pokey tool or a brad awl, I've just punched some holes through those or through the card so that I can get the split pins in. I think with a page like this, it's the little details that make the big difference. So rather than just stick on faux pearls or something like that, I thought I'd actually use real split pins. So now I'm happy with that. So time to add my page title. So I'm using the big chat stickers from Tim Holtz, and I've already chosen the two words live and adventure. So live adventure, which kind of fits the theme of just trying something different. So because we've got rust, I thought I'd add a little bit of verdigris effect. So I'm using the Peppermint Tea acrylic paint from Indigo Blue. And as I'm starting to put it onto the escutcheon, I discovered that because I've got a kind of orangey background, that this is actually turning more white. So I decided to go off and find the Kingfisher Blue metallic paint from Indigo Blue, which I've used previously in one of my canvases. And I think this is probably going to pop better on that coppery kind of rusty background. So using the dry brush technique, I'm just going to go around the page adding on this Kingfisher blue metallic paint across all of the cogs, the keys, and all of the metal items that are, or the faux metal items that are on my page. So that's the kind of verdigris effect that I was looking for on all of the cogs and the metal bits and pieces that are stuck down. But now I thought it was time to add some into the background of that metal effect plate that everything's stuck onto. So for that, I thought I would bring in that baby wipe and take some of the paint, add it to the baby wipe, and then just lightly dab and dust that paint across the rest of the metal plate. Very happy with the way it's looking, but I still need to get rid of the rest of that glitter from that patina effect. So I'm just going to grab some more of the Kingfisher blue on the brush and just dry brush over the top to eradicate the rest of that glittery effect. Just as a final touch, I just need to add a little bit of that blue colour just onto my main focal image. So I'm just going to add some splatters just to the top left and bottom right corners. Then I'm going to call this page complete. I don't want to do any more to it. I am happy with the way it looks, so I'm going to stop. So as you can see, I didn't really intend for that to happen, it just did, and as the page progressed, it just kind of evolved on its own. And I'm quite happy and I'm quite glad that it did, because I actually really love that page. So, and I think it's probably one of my most favourite ones that I've done in quite some time. So happy accidents are definitely welcome. So that's all from me. If you have enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. You can share the video with all your friends. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. That's all from me. I'll be back in a few days. See you all again soon. Bye for now. Oh, dirty fingers still.